Welcome back, guys. Thanks for tuning in to another video on the channel. Man, I just have had no time to do anything that I needed to get done because I've been doing shit that I shouldn't have been doing. Stuff like this. And this. And this. But topic of today's video is to get the M3 in here, get it jacked up, rod bearing time. ARP rod bolts, some assembly lube, and ACL bearings with fresh new Redline 550 oil. Yes, I'm putting 550 in it. I know a lot of guys go back to the factory weight, but I'm also going to give it, since I live in Florida and I don't necessarily need it to be cold weather, I want the good stuff in it with a little bit better clearances that I'm going to gain from the bearings. So I'm putting this video out here. It's not necessarily going to be a how-to like some of the other S65 rod bearing videos are out. I know some of you guys might be wondering where the Camaro's at. I've got it it's sitting over at my dad's shop to gain the space that I need to get this done, and then once this is done I can back it back out. I'll go back, pick the Camaro up, bring it back over here, and continue to get started on it. So yeah, unfortunately the shop's not built, so I have to continue to unfortunately work in the garage, which is not a problem. I mean, the garage is a oversized standard two-car garage. Like, I mean, you see the M3 pulled in, and even with this sticks out 2 feet from the wall, and I have all this walking clearance in front of the car to go around to the toolbox. And then when you come around to the back, and I have all that room right there to the welding table. So I mean, like, this garage is very big for a two car. It's got an 8-foot door. I just recently built these shelves. They come off the wall 2 feet and they're 3 feet tall, so I can fit a lot of storage, as you guys can see up there, get some stuff off the floor. So trying to tidy it up the best I can and try to use the space that I have available to me right now until the shop is built. And try to accommodate all the kids stuff and so on. So let me get this thing jacked up, guys. I'm gonna get it put on the cribbing stands and then go from there. So it's gonna be a multi-day process. I am not in a rush at all to get this thing done. I mean, sure, I don't want it sitting here for 2-3 weeks or a month or something like that. I have all the parts to do. I got a brand new oil pan gasket, all that. And I've got the dually to drive. The wife's got the other E90 to drive. So we're, you know, yeah, I don't want the car sitting, but I also am not going to rush and try to get this thing done in one day. So that's the luxury of being able to have multiple vehicles. If you guys don't have multiple vehicles, and when you do start turning wrenches on one or the other, I suggest you getting a third if you got a spouse, because man, I'll tell you, like, once you dip off into the 3-car plus armada, I guess you could say, lineup, fleet, whatever, you don't ever want to go back to each just having one car, or maybe even down to one, because that's terrible. So if you guys can afford it, situation presents itself for you guys to have 3 or more vehicles. I mean, even if they're, I mean, just say 3 beaters, right, and 1 breaks, then you also have always a backup. So most people that have 3 or more can probably attest to that and let you guys know, because I mean, I'm in a situation right now to where, like, you know, I gotta do rod bearings on this thing. I don't got to, but I'm going to as a preventive measure. And you know, I've got the Cummins to drive, so I don't necessarily like driving the dually every day. It's a 6-speed, you know, manual, lower down dually with big ass wheels on it. Like, yeah, it looks cool and it's an awesome tow rig. It's just, it's not necessarily for a daily driver. That, you know, both the E90s are fabulous daily drivers. You know, more so the 335D over the M3, because M3 is more of a, you know, it's more of a track car. I mean, you get in it, it's low, it's tight, it, you know, it gets fucking 7 miles a gallon or whatever it is. So, you know, you guys that own these M's and S65s and S85s with the V10s and stuff, like, man, absolutely 100% an amazing car. I love everything about it, probably except for the gas mileage, which I didn't buy the car for gas mileage. If I bought a car for gas mileage, it wouldn't be this. So I don't trip about the gas mileage. There's a lot of people that do, they're like, oh, this thing's only getting 12 miles a gallon or 14 miles a gallon. Well, dude, if you're bitching about the gas mileage, then go buy you something else. Like, don't buy a car, a performance car, and then bitch about the gas mileage. I mean, if you want to, get you something like that. 335D, I mean, it puts out way more torque than the M. It's faster in a straight line than the M, and it just necessarily won't hold the same corners as the M, but whatever. And it gets, you know, high 30s in the city. If I cruise on it in the interstate, it's in the 40s. So, I mean, and it's fast. So, enough blobbing and blabbing. Let me get this thing lifted up and we'll move forward. Okay, guys, up on the cribbing stands. I went in and put a jack underneath it just in the center right there because I was like testing the stands, make sure everything's nice and safe. And I put that underneath there as an extra before I slid underneath there and tried to do some basic analyzing. So it's going to be a little straightforward. I say that because it seems a very simple job to me, and most people you turn wrenches all the time. I mean doing rod bearings in an engine is not that hard. Always the interferences to getting to the rod bearings are the toughest part. So, you know, I got to put the engine support bar that I got across here. I got to turn wheels off. I got to undo all the subframe stuff. The subframe's going to come out, and then once you do that, then you can, you know, you can get after the rod bearing. So I just went to Harbor Freight and picked up this little Pittsburgh engine support stand deal, and you know, that's all it really needs. So I was going to go over some basic parts with you guys just so you have an understanding. 4-liter, hopefully that'll, I don't know if that's going to focus for you guys, but it's 201-6001, and these are the 4-liter S65 rod bearings. 2 new motor mounts, because why not, right? Get in there and replace them. These things are known for compressing them and being, you know, basically shot with, I mean, even like 50,000 miles on them. So my car's got 92K on it, so I figured I'd go ahead and replace them while I'm in there. And these are the aftermarket, what are they, 034 Motorsports. I don't know if you can see them. They're supposed to be a little bit more firm than like stock. So assembly lube for the bearings, and then I went with the ACL bearings. These are the special ones from, well, they're not special. It's actually kind of funny. I'll talk about it. This company tried to copy like BE bearings and stuff, and what they did is they found that you can run, like, see, they have them labeled as bottom and tops. And when I got to looking at the part number, I'm like, well, these say standard on the side of them, and then these others say standard as well. But when you look at the part numbers were different. And what I found out is that, I believe it was the tops, they basically gave you a plus 0.01 additional clearance on the top versus the bottom. So that's how they're able to give you like the little bit increased clearances that people say that these S65s needs. And so I'd have to review exactly. I'll put it in the description below who I bought the rod bearings from, but it was kind of funny how they did that. And then I got an OEM filter to put in it, and I'm going to be running Redline's 5W50 synthetic oil. So I bought a whole case of it, so I've got a whole bunch of it, enough for probably, I think, almost 2 oil changes. So the car's already due for an oil change anyway. So this is kind of like a perfect time to do it. I didn't want to just do an oil change and then have to turn around and, you know, do another one. So here's Christian. What's up, dude? Hey. What, you out here driving this thing or what, man? Dang, spins out too? You hitting the nitrous on that thing or what?
I hit the nitrous.
Oh, you hitting the nitrous? What about turbo? Is it turboed? I see you got some stickers on this thing. Let's check this thing out, man. Man, look at this. Got Summit, right? You got Summit parts in this thing or what, man?
I lost the other one, so it just flew away, and we have to find it later. Dad.
Okay, well, that's no problem. Show us what this thing's got, man. What? You better watch where you're driving. So anyway, Christian's out here helping me have a good time. It's a beautiful day. Man, it was gorgeous today. So I'm gonna try to take my time. Oh, so let me show you guys another thing I picked up from a friend of mine that's also in the local M group. It is the Megan Racing exhaust. I had like the full kit. It's got test pipes and stuff. My car's already got test pipes, so I'm not really worried about that. But the exhaust is extremely dirty, and I've got some of this white diamond metal polish that I was gonna try to clean it up. I mean, this thing's pretty rough. It looks like the car went down a dirt road, whatever exhaust was on. So I'm gonna try to get that thing cleaned up. I apologize for this tractor being so loud, guys. I know that thing's ridiculous on the video, but I was gonna try to get the stock exhaust off of it and put the Megan Racing exhaust on it. I was actually already thinking about putting the Megan Racing exhaust on it, but man, everywhere I went, they were like sold out, and he gave me a hell of a deal on this thing. So I'm gonna get it cleaned up. I'm gonna actually polish it up and get it presentable, so I don't just shove it on my car dirty and nasty. And then I'm actually probably gonna bolt it up to the car before I do the rod bearings, so then that way I can get like an understanding of how it's gonna sound. And then if I need to, these cars, I'll show you guys. So this is the test pipe that's been replaced. When it comes right off the header, right here at the end of my finger, it connects to the header. So this is where the pipe would be, would have the primary cat. And then it comes into the X pipe, which it hits a secondary set of cats. Then it keeps going and it runs into a set of resonators. All right, and then it comes back, and this is where your like axle back would be, right? It unbolts from right here, and then you have these pipes here that go into the mufflers in the back. And I'm going to bolt the Megan exhaust up, which the pipes come all the way up and they connect right here. And then that's where I'm gonna start it, and I'm gonna see how it sounds. And then what I'm gonna do is, instead of spending like $1,000 or $1,500 for these aftermarket X pipes that you can get with like no cats, or they're literally like straight pieces of pipe in here and they're bent certain ways for the car and all that, or you can get them with the resonators. I'm gonna see how it sounds with the cats and the resonators on it. And then if it's still not what I want, then I'm gonna possibly cut the front cats out or the rear cats out and put a piece of straight pipe in its place, and then keep the resonators, because I don't want any kind of drone. You know, with this being my daily driver, this is the last thing I need, is this thing to be like race car loud. So anyway, that's that, guys. Let me get this thing cleaned up, and I'll check back with you in here shortly. All right, so I took a little extra time and cleaned up the new / old Megan exhaust that I got, and I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. I didn't want to just dump it on the car with how it looked, so I took a little hand polish and polished her up. I mean, she looks a lot better, because considering, you know, that used to look like that for the most part, and I wasn't really necessarily, because I mean, you see these Megan exhausts, you know, like hanging down, like when you're looking at the back of the car, you know, you see that bottom portion pretty much of that whole back part of that round muffler. And you know, the tip's cleaned up real nice. I'm definitely very impressed with the way that looks compared to how that stock one's gonna look. So you can see that big stock muffler hanging underneath there. But that's pretty much what I've been doing here for the last, well, I put a couple hours into it. So now I'm gonna take and focus on getting the stock exhaust from the axle back taken off, and then that way I can get the Megan up there and see what all I gotta weld to make it work. And I'll touch base back with you guys and show you what I'm talking about in a minute. All right, so I'm at a point right now where I really haven't made too much progress on getting the engine stuff set up yet. Buddy of mine, Chris, came over, and we've got the exhaust set up on it now. It's got the Megan, but the muffler's set up for E92, so the tips are sticking out a little long. So I'm gonna have to adjust those and bring those in a little bit. But it's on there, started up before I drained the oil, and it sounds pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. So as far as moving forward, I've got the oil drained out of it. I've got the engine support bar laying on the ground there. That's about to go up and get set up to support the engine before I start taking any of the bottom stuff apart. So I'm going to pull the intake box off, get the support bar up here, use this one support lifting point there, and then another one down there, probably somewhere near a header bolt or whatever. So get that set up, and then I'll move forward with tearing all the subframe stuff apart. I've got the skid plate off already, and move forward with starting to get this oil pan off. A little bit to where it's dark out, thanks to Chris and I. Finally got some help in the garage, man. Hard help's hard to find, isn't it? Okay, so before going too crazy, I wanted to show you guys, kind of upside down here, but I wanted to point out a few things that you're gonna have to look out for when you get ready to take this thing down. There's a few different ways you can do it. I'm gonna try to attempt to leave most of the steering stuff up and finagle the subframe out and away from it. But basically you got some small interferences up here you've got to take loose. Then you have the sway bar end links. They've got to be taken off. And then you've got your two lower control arms. So the one here, and then the other one that goes in here, which they're just hanging down. Once you get those out of the way, and then you can go ahead and start busting off all your, you've got 8 major subframe bolts. You've got one up in here, one beside your motor mount. So you're gonna take your lower motor mount bolt off, or your nut, and then the other subframe bolt. You've got one in that hole right at the end of my finger right there, and then you've got another one that's a 16 millimeter at the very end of this, how this goes out and ends. And that's 8. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 on this side, and the exact same replica on that side. And basically we've got it to the point to where, like, I mean, it's free. I've got the last 2 bolts that are in, and I mean, it's loose. So I wanted to stop the video real quick and show you guys what I was working with before just moving to the next clip and being like, oh yeah, here's the oil pan off of it, because then it's not really going to show you anything. Make sure that you go through, and if you're doing, you know, peasant life like me, where you're on stands and you're not on a lift, please just be extremely careful when it comes to your safety. Make sure you take extra precaution with keeping them safe. And I mean, I've got the cribbings under it. I've got 6-ton jack stands on the front, these little small 3s in the rear, and I've still got my jack centered up underneath the transmission just in case. Because like I spoke about in one of the other previous videos, I've actually had one follow me, and I'm lucky to be alive. So please be careful. Even if you're using a lift, please be careful. So came back up top, made sure the engine support bar was nice, sitting good. It's attached to the one location here. And what I did with this, I ended up running a ratchet strap down and around one of the header tubes. And then I didn't want to like mess up anything with running like chain and such. And so I've got it all nice and tight. It's supporting the engine up. And, you know, of course it's still bolted to the transmission. So, you know, you've got a little bit of that helping support the engine. So I'm at a point right now to where the subframe's about to come down. So it's probably going to be a little bit of a trouble, because I'm trying to keep the steering connected while pulling the subframe off. It might not necessarily work out like that, but I'm hoping for the best. I know some people have done it that way. And then I'll touch base back with you guys here in just a little bit and show you exactly how I got it out. And it's out. What do you think?
Bit of a struggle.
Yeah, so if you're on your back and you were doing this in your garage and you happen to do it with the steering still connected, right? Like, I didn't break any hydraulic lines loose. This is all rubber, so it's able to be flexed and stuff. But if you leave that stuff connected and you're on your back and you're trying to get that out of the subframe, you are going to have a time, because what we did, really me, because I was kind of leading the project or whatever, but basically I neglected to take the ball joints off of the steering rack to the spindle, and we fought with it for a few minutes trying to figure out exactly like how to snake out the subframe. And so basically you've got to disconnect your ball joints on your steering rack from your spindles, so then that way you can get this out. And if you don't, you're not getting it out. So you pretty much have to, like, your lines, attach here. They come over the top of the subframe to the steering rack, which bolts in these two brackets right here. And then they go through for your part of your steering rack that goes to your ball joints. And then so it's all snaked in here like that with your lines. And so if you leave all that stuff connected, you're not just like, this doesn't just drop down out of your way. Now, if you disconnect your steering, well, I mean, you just drain this power steering fluid and then go about your day. It's just gonna be probably a lot simpler, especially if you're on a lift. But everything's still holding tight. We're good to go on the support bar. Let me grab a light for you guys and I'll show you what kind of view you're looking at here with it all free. So you pretty much can get to your shitty motor mounts. I mean, I haven't even loosened that yet, guys, and look at that. And then you can see this side is completely broke off. I mean, that's broken too, and I'll show it to you when I get back up. But you got your front part of your pickup for the oil sump and then your back part. But basically, like, you know, I can get to all of that now. This pan's gonna come down, and with that whole steering like rotated out of my way, I mean, I've got free reign to the oil pan. Like, it's nothing. Motor mount's gonna be super easy. The bolt right there is on the top, or the nut, and then off that goes. And then I just get to take out all these little small Torx and this dampener that's right here, and down comes the pan. There's like 4 bolts on the back here that bolt to the bell housing, which will be probably actually start with those, and then down it comes. So, but I wanted to kind of explain that to you guys before I moved forward. It was kind of a pain in your ass. Of course, any job you do in the garage on your fucking back, you know, it doesn't really necessarily work out. Luckily, I've had Chris over here to help me out. It would have been a pain. I probably would have cussed a few times if it would have been just by myself. But yeah, that's that. So pretty much just want to touch base, and then I'll get the oil pan down, and so that'll probably wrap it up for tonight. And then I'll actually follow the video up for tomorrow with pulling all the bearings out and laying them out for you guys to see. Okay, so I was going to display why everyone says to change these engine mounts out when you get ready to do this job, because one, you don't want to be doing this. But I mean, this is not a super precise measurement, but as you can see, I mean, that lip is pretty much lined up, right? And I was going to kind of show you with a straight edge. Like, if I go to that lip, they're pretty straight. But then if you go up to the next one, which is where they start failing, like, it's flat there and goes across, and look how much is missing right there. I mean, of course, the other portion of it's still in the car, but I mean, it's probably compressed a good 1/4 inch. And then if you go to the next level up, which is actually still in the car, I mean, you can see how much is missing. But I wanted to kind of show you guys that. This car's only got 90,000 miles on it, and that's what happened to the motor mount. And these are OEM. These have never been replaced. So spend the extra $100, $200, get yourself a set of brand new motor mounts, and when you do your rod bearings, you can do this at the same time. Okay, so oil pan is off the motor. I kind of wanted to show you guys what I found here. This is literally the first bearing that I pulled off on the number 2 cylinder, and it looks in really good shape. So not necessarily what I wanted to see, but at the exact same time, it's good to know that the motor is healthy. So oil pan's off, everything looks nice and clean in there. It's kind of dark, I know you can't really see that, but I'm gonna show you guys. I mean, the motor's extremely clean looking inside here. I've still got to get the tubes off to finish pulling the rest of these off, but I wanted to kind of quickly see like what one of these would look like. So did it have to be done? You know, no. But just like bearings in an engine, you don't know until you look at them and tear them apart. So for all I know, they could have been bad. If the rest of them come out looking anything like this one, well, then, you know, it's gonna be okay. But you know, 90,000 miles, these things look really good for a set of S65 bearings, which makes me feel real happy. But anyway, touch base back with you guys here. I'm gonna get the oil pickup tubes off and pop the upper shell off of the rod for cylinder number 2, and get them stuck out on the table here. So see you guys in a minute. So I've got the first one out, cylinder number 2. I made this quick little diagram to be able to place all the top shells and then the bottom ones on the cap, just kind of for quick reference. I've got the bearing, the plus clearance bearing on the rod side, or the cap side, and the rod side I've just installed. Got all my bolts laid out, instructions for torquing the ARP rod bolts. So I just kind of wanted to show you guys what is going on down here. And it might be a little difficult to see, but I've got that bearing installed up there. I don't have any lube on it yet because I don't have it down on the crank, but I wanted to kind of show you guys up inside there. You just kind of have to make sure that you do that, you know, be a little meticulous with what you're doing. Get your hand in there, make sure you're not scoring the crank up at all. And you take your time, and that's that. So literally I've only got the first cylinder out. I'm just kind of taking my time, but you know, it's actually not that bad. It's going to be kind of hard to see maybe on video here, but you know, a little light scoring there. You can see that whole brown area, that's for the top section. I mean, the top of these bearings are always a lot worse than the bottoms. The bottom don't look that bad at all. So stock rod bolts and then the ARP bolts. So I'm going to keep kicking and get these things installed, and then we'll move forward. Okay, so I kind of wanted to get a good video of this and show some people that maybe are not familiar with the way rod bolts, rod bearings go into the rod caps. So I'm going to try to show you guys the best I can here. You've got your cap, and your cap has a groove cut into it for, you can see how this other side doesn't have it, and it's for the placement of the bearing to be put in properly. And so on this bearing, you have a piece of it that has been basically machined outward and pressed like out. And that's what a lot of people refer to as the tang of a bearing. And you can see how this other side doesn't have that at all. And so you basically match up the tang to the opening of the cap itself like that. And so the way it's done is you give it this, you know, good solid wipe, get it clean, and then you do the same thing here. You give the bearing nice clean wipe. Make sure you use some gloves. You know, don't use your dirty greasy hands that it just took for you to completely just tear apart your engine to go be putting your brand new clean bearings back in your engine. So what I do, which is pretty standard, most people end up lining them up this way, but you get your tang started in place and get it kind of level with the break in the rod cap, right? And then you kind of just hold it there, and what happens is you line it up the best you can with the width of this side and the width of this side. Now this side's going to be a little wider than this side, and it's due to the chamfer on the crank. It's designed to be slightly offset for the opening, like I said, the chamfer area on the crank. And so this side is the machine side that touches the other rod, or they're extremely close. They don't necessarily touch. I mean, you have a slight oil film that separates them too, but basically you just get it lined up like that, get it in a position where it's nice and level, and then I usually like hold the cap like this with my thumb, and as you push down on this bearing, you slightly push inward, just, I mean, ever so slightly, and what that does is that helps you create that distance and that gap. And so I just hold it in place like that with my one thumb, take this bearing and slowly, easily push it down until you see it bottom out. And what happens is you'll have this side be almost flush where you're holding it with your thumb, and then this side's a little higher up. So what I do is I try to completely center up those differences, right? And so you'll notice that now we have just a slight opening there and a slight opening there. And what I try to do is just try to even those up the best I can, because now when you take your top bearing and you put it on the rod and it comes down and creates your circle, it's going to be mated up completely circle like that, and it's going to be inside the journals of the rod. And so that's pretty much that. I just kind of wanted to make sure you guys are kind of aware on how that's done if you're not familiar with it. It's pretty simple. You just got to kind of make sure that, you know, you're not putting anything, you know, underneath the bottom. You want to install those dry. I'm not necessarily taking, like, you know, brake clean and wiping them out completely, but that would be considered an installed lower portion of the bearing. That tang is sitting there and they're nice. It's not going to go nowhere. It's completely bottomed out on the cap. It's not going to move. The only way it would move is if I pushed my thumb down this way or this way, and it would rotate around this way. But obviously, we're not going to try to attempt that. And then I'm going to take a little bit of the assembly lube, and I brush it on. I mean, I've been using it on my finger, but my wife finally just hooked me up with a little brush, and it just kind of helps me keep my gloves clean. I mean, you don't have to use a brush. You can use, you know, use your finger, you know, your glove, but you might be constantly changing out gloves at that point. So, you know, kind of keep in mind that if you use a brush, you could potentially introduce a piece of that hair that's on the brush inside. So, I mean, maybe take the extra 2 seconds that it takes to kind of analyze and make sure you've got no paintbrush hairs in there. But I'll you know, put a decent amount in there. You don't have to lob it up completely, but you know, you want to give the bearing a good protection on startup. Eventually all this will go away, and your, you know, layer of film of oil will then be circulated through that. But for the installation purposes, this cap would be ready for install back on the rod. And so what I'm going to do now is just kind of go through, prep all the ARP rod bolts, and take ARP's fastener assembly lube and brush it all onto the threads and underneath the head of the bolt. I'm going to go ahead and pre-stage and do all of them. That way I'm not going back and forth between the brushes and stuff and getting, you know, stuff all over my gloves. And then I'll go through and I'll do one rod at a time throughout the rest of the engine. That way I can make sure that as I go back through the engine, I can say, hey, yeah, that, you know, that rod is torqued because it's already got an ARP rod bolt in place. I don't have to worry about paint marking it or nothing. I know that if the ARP rod bolt is in there, then I know that bearing has been completed. And it's pretty simple to keep track at that point. So anyway, thought I'd show you guys that point. Alrighty, so there you guys have it. All 8 bearings are out. You guys probably can't see them, but these are the tops too well. But you know, that number 7 cylinder right there, you can see a little bit of copper. Let me see if I can get to the right at the end of this tool. Has a little bit, you know, I don't know if it's copper based or what that below the aluminum. I mean, I know this is an LCI model with aluminum bearings, but anyway, that's the that's like the worst one. All the bottoms that are on the caps themselves look fairly reasonable. I mean, overall, if you were to ask me how those bearings look for a 90,000 mile engine, I'd tell you that they're absolutely fucking terrible. No 90,000 mile motor should look like this. You know, I understand that the engineers that design these engines and the S65 V10 that's in the M5 are extremely more intelligent than I am. And they obviously had their reasons for the tolerances that they designed the motor to be ran in. But, you know, all these stories over the years after these cars came out where, you know, people were tearing apart, you know, a 20, 30, 40,000 mile motor, and the damn bearings look worse than these. And it could also still be a post LCI, you know, an LCI model, and they look worse than this. It's still, I mean, to me, BMW, you didn't fix the problem. You might have you might have improved the issue, but you didn't correct the problem. But nonetheless, you're talking about an extremely well put together car. I mean, if you guys have not ever had the privilege of ever driving one of these cars, even the F80s today, and then obviously the brand new one with the large kidney grills that just come out, like, you quite don't know what you're missing with this car. These E90 chassis, especially, you know, that one too is extremely fun, but this one, with the suspension, the way it's laid out, obviously the high revving naturally aspirated V8, the brakes, all around just an amazing car. I've always been a GM guy growing up. Really in high school, I dealt with a lot of Fox bodies. Dad and I, you know, we were always dibble dabbling in something, and, you know, Chevelles and such. And so I had never dipped off into the foreign world until, you know, within the last few years. But I'll tell you, owning one of these cars, yeah, you might dig into your pockets just a little bit more than compared to, say, a, you know, a Camaro or something like that, but you can't touch one of these cars when it comes. I mean, I know the track numbers are saying that they're just as fast because GM and Ford and stuff is making amazing vehicles nowadays. I mean, you're talking like the new C8, the GT500, like the new flat plane crank, apparently V8 Z06 C8. So I mean, the cars are, the bar is up here, whereas the bar when I was growing up was, you know, down here. And when I was growing up, obviously this car wasn't made yet, but, you know, the earlier BMWs were there already, and Camaros and Mustangs, and, you know, all your Firebirds and stuff, like all our stuff that we had here in America, it wasn't quite to that bar yet. And so if you get a chance, get yourself into one of these. Not necessarily own one, but definitely try to drive it, a friend or what have you, and you know, just, man, get into one and enjoy it and feel the quality of the German design on how they do this stuff. I'm gonna give you an example. This car's got 90,000 miles on it. That car has 196, I think, almost 200,000 miles. And that car feels just as tight as this car right here. And what I mean by tight is, like, you open and close the doors, they don't sag, they don't drag, the windows roll up, the seals are tight, it don't rattle, it don't shake. Man, I can't even explain to you. If you got into a 200,000 mile, you know, 2010 Camaro SS out there right now, dude, your interior would be falling apart, your fucking door seals would have already been replaced. Like, it just minor stuff. And people don't think about those kind of things until you get into something a little bit like next level, right? Like, just to give you an example, I mean, this car in 2011, I have the original window sticker in the car, and it sold for, well, I don't know what it actually sold for, but the window sticker price was $72,000 in 2011. So we're talking, you know, almost 10 years now, and a 10-year-old car was $72,000. In 2011, if you were to go buy, you know, a Camaro SS, you could get a fully kitted 5th gen Camaro for probably, you know, mid 40s at that time. So you're talking, you know, straight line performance. Sure, the Camaro would actually probably outrun this back in the day. The LS3 with the 6L80, or even maybe the 6-speed. But, you know, as far as handling, the creature comforts, the quality of the materials, the overall driving experience, you just can't touch it. I mean, I'm serious. I owned also a 2011 CTS-V, you know, commonly called the V2, and it also was, like I said, 2011, and it also was a $72,000. I had the original window sticker for it, and it was a $72,000 car. So they were very equal in price, and I can't knock the CTS-V, because the CTS-V was an extremely nice car. Obviously, it was Cadillacs, was a little bit higher up than your standard GM vehicles, and obviously it was a V, so it was, you know, the next level performance, obviously. But it would have been comparable to this in a lot of ways. It actually in a lot of ways had a little bit more, it had better options in it, you know, air conditioned seats and Alcantara stuff, which this you can get Alcantara in it. But anyway, long story short, the rod bearings are done. I kind of went off on a tangent there, sorry. But I'll tell you, you know, now that I own a couple of these, especially these E90s, and I know the newer ones are going to be absolutely amazing vehicles, but during this time, I think BMW was really shining. I think through the late 2000s and to the early teens, BMW was coming off of, you know, the E36, and I think that they had to step their level up. The inline six just wasn't doing it for them anymore. The numbers weren't keeping up with, you know, a lot of the American cars, and so they come out with this car, and it was a complete redesign, obviously a completely different body, you know, suspension and such. And so I think they really put forth the effort to make sure that this car was like top notch. And even the M5 edition in this, which has got the S85 V10, it's practically the same exact engine, just plus 2 cylinders. And so yeah, that's enough rambling about the cars. But if you get a chance, get into one and experience it. Coming back to these, they're all out. The new ones are in. I've got the oil pickup, the double oil pickup, which we could probably see a little bit. I don't have to get you completely under the car, but both oil pickups are back on and torqued. And so I've got the oil pan drained out as best I can at the moment to the drain pan here, and I've got the new gasket on it. It's just the metal single layer gasket. So I took and put some brake clean all on the surfaces and got them nice and dry and clean. And then I've just set the gasket up there for right now. I'm gonna get underneath the car and do the same thing to the bottom of the block to make sure that it's good. Nice clean mating surface, get all my bolts laid out, and then you know, get ready to install that and get it torqued down so that way I can proceed with getting the subframe back up. I'm gonna try to have this thing done today. I don't necessarily think that it might not be achievable depending on how much, you know, I got a couple of my buddies that are headed over. We might get to doing a little bit more rambling than I do wrench turning, but you know, I'm gonna try. If not, I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll get it done. So, but I definitely want to touch base with you guys, let you guys know that's all complete, moving forward, taking things slow, you know, no rush. I'm not a shop. Obviously, you guys keep up with the channel and the videos, but yeah, so I'm gonna get this thing done and I'll touch base back with you guys here in just a moment. Oh, you know what? I want to talk about this. So this is a tool that I have made because I didn't have anything else. So it's just a standard little quarter socket that's got the acceptance of these like little 5/16 bits that you buy and put in. And I bought a piece of rod and I welded it because on the bottom of these oil pans, they take a special bit, and I'll show you guys when I get it up in there to get it up inside that oil pan, and it's kind of a pain in the ass. I thought I had a bits to work, but I ended up having to just make it because actually it's kind of hard to find. You go to Harbor Freight or anything else, and you can find long Allens that have the 3-inch driver, the 1/4-inch sockets built into them for your ratchets, but it's very hard to find extremely long, like 6-inch plus torques, you know, star bits. And so I just made one, and so busted out the welder and got it done. So I just kind of wanted to make sure you guys keep that in mind if you're doing this job. Make sure you keep an eye out for these. If you build them, then that's cool too, you know. So but yeah, I'll touch base back with you in a minute. Okay, back at it, guys. Finally got this thing complete, and I kind of jumped ahead, so I didn't really necessarily, you know, show you guys putting the subframe back on and putting in bolting and tightening. It's like, I mean, it's just the reverse. If you dive into this project with any of the M3s, M5s that do rod bearings, and you pull all the stuff off and you're in there doing the rod bearings, well, guess what? It's just reverse putting everything back on. So I didn't bore you guys in the video with trying to tell you, okay, you need to tighten the subframe mount bolt to 80 foot-pounds. Like, there's just no point. So follow the service bulletin on how to tighten and torque certain specs. I'm not gonna explain that to you guys on the video, but she's done. Saturday, a few days later, like I said, I was in no rush to get it done. I just got done taking around the block for a quick spin and checking it out. Everything sounds good. I ended up putting the oil in it, and you know, I had to check on that because these cars don't have dipsticks on them. They have like a little onboard measuring sensor deal. So as soon as I got in and got it leveled out here in the garage, which is still a wreck, I've got to get in there and get my tools and stuff cleaned up. And but I'll tell you what, this thing's nice. The new motor mounts feel good. Corona over there, that's important. But I got the new exhaust put on. It sounds pretty good. You can see those tips kind of stick out kind of far. This muffler section, it was made for an E90 2, which they needed to come out a little further. So on the E90s, they stick out a little bit. So what I'm going to do is either take and drill these holes out on the rivets and pull them in, or either move the whole section of the pipe forward and leave all the hangers and stuff stock or whatever. But it doesn't look too bad. It sounds pretty good. It's nice and deep and throaty sounding, compared to the stock exhaust that was modified. So see if you guys can kind of hear it. Here, I'll tell you what. I got this thing on a tripod, excuse me. See if you guys can kind of understand what this thing sounds like. So there you go. Sounds pretty good. It's definitely nice and soft and mellow, sounding like it was stock. Sitting here at idle, you know, I'm not gonna wake up early in the morning to go to work or something and have the car start up and piss the neighbors off. And yeah, so two things. One was the tips. The other is my steering wheel is ever so slightly off. So like, you know, going straight down the road, it's like turned, I mean literally like 2 degrees, like very similar, a very a small amount. So I'm gonna have to get in here and reposition that steering shaft on the rack and pinion, which is no big deal. I winged it. I didn't mark it. A lot of guys get in there with a Sharpie or a piece of tape and line it up. I mean, it was my own fault. I pulled the bolt out to pull it out, and then that was it. So but yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. It's back together. It's sounded good, feels good. The new motor mounts are in it. And then you know, there's the neighbor tray. So yeah, that's it's pretty straightforward. A little bit of a job, but you know, you guys that's got some good technical expertise behind your belt, you know, you get in there and you potentially save yourself from some catastrophic failure. I mean, you can see there's some copper or whatever shining through. So needless to say, gonna get the shop cleaned up here, garage, whatever, and then start packing the stuff away. And that's gonna be pretty much it, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe and that like button for me, and I'll see you guys next time.